Hello everyone. Today we're going to talk about the quad chart format that SBA recommends for the SBIR Road Tour. Please note that although this is the preferred format for the SBIR Road Tour, it can be used for any of the SBIR or STTR conferences that you attend, particularly the national show or one of the two national shows are the National Institute of Health focused ones, any of the NASA focused ones, really any of the SBIR or STTR events that are out there that you'll have the opportunity to talk to one of the federal program managers. When looking at the quad chart, there's a couple key pieces of information to know. The first thing is that the quad chart is actually kind of a one-page overview that really just talks about what you're working on, why it's important or unique, what is the opportunity that's there or the commercial potential, and a really brief introduction into your company and team so that you can kind of convince whoever is looking at the quad chart that you have the wherewithal, the capability, and the expertise to bring this product to market. When looking at the quad chart, you'll notice that there's 4 distinct sections that you'll actually fill out. Each one of them is a roughly quarter of a page, and since there are 4 of them, they are each in their own quadrant, hence the term quad chart. Now for the sake of argument and just to ease the transition here, we're going to number the quad chart in this manner. 1, 2, 3, and 4. Before we get into the quadrants though, you notice that one of the key pieces of information at the top is actually your company contact information. So here you'll list your company, the state, and then contact information for one of your employees. Typically for the contact information, you'll actually put a C-level employee, so someone like a CEO, president, COO, CTO, really anyone that has the ability and authorization to enter into a contract for the organization. A lot of times you'll see this referred to as something like an AOR, or Authorized Organizational Representative. The reason you would put someone like this is if a program manager is going to do outreach to your business to talk more about what you want to do with the SBIR, they're also going to want to know the goals. How is it going to help your company develop? Where are you going to go with it further? Kind of what are going to be the next key stages? Typically, if you have somebody like a subject matter expert up there, or the researcher that's working on that one particular innovation, they're not going to be able to speak towards those concepts and towards that kind of larger picture for the organization itself. So in the first quadrant here, you're really going to talk about the technology or the innovation itself. So what actually is it? What makes it unique? Why is it different? What is that piece of technology you're developing? You'll talk about if there's any intellectual property that's currently been filed on the idea. If you actually have a patent number, it'd be great to drop it in there. The stage of development, so where currently are you at with that idea? Do you have computational models? Is it bench testing? Do you have similar prototypes? What is the current state of that technology? And then when you talk about the value proposition, that value proposition is really what makes this unique, what makes it different, why are people going to pay attention to this? So for someone like NSF, this is largely mapped towards things like the broader impacts. So why do people need to pay attention to what your innovation is? So for quadrant 2 here, you're really going to cover kind of what is that thing that you need to do during that phase 1 or phase 2 effort. Remember, during a phase 1, even though you are just testing the feasibility, you're really testing the feasibility against that 1 or maybe 2 critical problems that you have to solve or address to ensure that your solution or innovation is going to work. So when you talk about that research need, it's where are you currently at? What is that biggest barrier, that biggest hurdle that you have to address? And how do you think you're going to be able to address it? This also shows that focus of where you're going to move in the future and It lays down that foundation of you have a clear path forward. Even though you don't have the solution at hand, you have ideas about how to test it, you have ideas about where you need to go, and you know what those next key steps are. This actually engenders confidence in your solution and your company from a programmatic standpoint. This quadrant is also a great place to put an infographic or a diagram about your idea. If you are going to put an infographic or diagram, make sure that all the information is actually included in that image, because the image, in order for it to be readable, should take up most of that area. If you're going to put a diagram in there, make sure you cover important key factors such as what's new, what's different, what's novel about what you're doing, how many people the solution will affect, or the eventual product, and why is what you're working on important? Remember, any of the information that would typically go in this quadrant should actually be embedded into a graphic, but a graphic does tell a really great story about what you're working on, and it can make the information a lot easier to digest for most reviewers. So when you talk about the company here, it's kind of that overview and that background of who is your company? Who do you have employed? And why do you matter? What is the expertise and the experience and knowledge base that your company and your team bring to the table that's ultimately going to mean success during your SBIR or STTR efforts? One of the key items you'll see on here is the mission. So it's kind of that focus about where do you want to be in the next 5 to 10 years. When the agencies are looking at these, they really want to kind of invest in those ideas that are going to grow. What is going to be a key marker? How's your company going to actually grow? How are you going to hire more people? How are you going to make sales? Because remember, just as the top of the form says, the SBIR and STTR programs are America's seed fund. So it is a seed fund. Although the government wants no equity, you can think of this as an investment into your company and your idea. One of the other key pieces of information here is the facility description. So in the facility description, you want to talk about your office, your research space, your workspace, whatever that is, the tools, the resources, and the equipment that you have available there. But something that a lot of people tend to overlook is the fact that if you have access to other facilities, if you have access to other equipment, other tools, like a collaboration agreement with a university or a national lab, that can actually go in your facility description too, because it's not just the space, the tools, and the equipment that you have at your backyard, but also what do you have at your fingertips? Who can you outreach with? Who can you connect with? What other capabilities can you use and that you can easily access? Because technically, when you look at any of the SBIR or STTR proposal packages, when you cover facilities and equipment, it is also those items. It is the research space, the workspace, the $1 million microscopes that you can find at partner organizations or other organizations that you have a collaborative relationship with. So lastly, here you have the opportunity, and the opportunity really is that commercial potential for what you are working on. Remember, with the SBIR and STTR programs, commercial potential is a huge portion of actually really any of the agencies now. A lot of the agencies have been having that larger push into the commercial potential and the commercial side of innovation for a couple of cycles now. So when we look here, the need or the problem is that customer pain point you're going to address. So what makes the customer's life just unbearable about what they're having to do now? It's really that what are you doing that it makes people interested in buying your product? How are you addressing a problem that the average customer, whoever that customer segment is, faces in their normal operations? And also remember, when you think about customer pain points, and also when you think about competition and how you are better than the competition, lower price is not really a pain point. Just because you have a solution that is 10% cheaper than the tool set that's out there, that's not really a benefit to most customers because you're asking them to take a chance on a new product. So price and convenience is a hard one to justify. But if you're doing something different, if you're making it so that instead of having to buy 3 instruments, they can buy 1 instrument and get all the same, faculties they need to perform their job, then that is a customer pain point because you talk about the transition between using different tools. You talk about the errors in measurement that come up because they're having to go to different tools, jotting down notes, things like that. And speaking of competition, just remember, and this is something a lot of people kind of struggle with, is no matter what you're doing, you always have competition. You may be coming up with the most unique, the most grandiose, the newest idea out there that's going to just blow everybody's socks right off. But you still have competition because the competition is the old way people did it. How did they solve the problem before your product came along? That is the competition you have because you're breaking them of habits. You're actually breaking them of just the general use, the way everybody does stuff. So when you talk about competition, never forget to address that point. When you're looking at your target customer, don't be afraid to use, keywords like beachhead market or initial foray or anything like that. Any of the agencies are going to want to see how you're going to grow across time, how you're actually going to put together new ideas, how you're going to target other customers as you build a better product. So when you talk about the target customer, that is kind of that life cycle customer. Who all can you target? And can you target them in different ways? Is one of the offerings a product? Is one of the offerings a service? Is one of the offerings an integration service? Anything like that really does speak to that target customer. And then also that market opportunity. Who all can you sell this to? What are their different markets? What does that market actually spend? Any sort of concrete data or concrete numbers you can throw in here will actually give the reviewer or the person looking at this document that kind of grounding in reality. They'll see that you did your homework. They'll see that you actually have some good, valid theoretical numbers in here, and you also know how to approach that market. But be very wary with this because if you say that this product has a $10 billion market and you're going to capture 2% of that market over a 6-month period, it's going to be very hard to make 200 million in sales over a 6-month period. So just kind of be aware of keeping these figures grounded in reality. What can you theoretically do as a small business? How can you grow? Who can you sell this to? And so that kind of really wraps up our overview of what information goes into this quad chart and why it's kind of key and important to include that information. If you have any questions on how to fill out this quad chart, if you need any help, if you want a review on any of the information that was in there, don't hesitate to contact the NMFAST program. If you are not a New Mexico-based small business, we still might be able to provide some assistance, or we might be able to match you with some of the key assistance programs that are in your backyard. We're always here to help because, to be frank, we're not doing our jobs well if people out there are not winning SBIR and STTR awards. Thank you again, and as always, feel free to contact us if you have any questions.